The village hidden in the leaves, home to ramen, a cool monument, and even child labor. But what's really going on under the surface? Who's paying for all these shuriken? And how does the economy of the hidden leaf even work? Let's talk about it. We might even find out if Kakashi is a millionaire. For the average citizen, Konoha's economy looks pretty standard. Shops, food stalls, and local businesses provide services for everyone, from train moguls to humble ramen shop owners. And it's not just ramen. From everything we've seen of Konoha, it seems like there's a bustling food industry all around, not to mention the great sites that probably drive tourism. But at the end of the day, all of it is propped up by the economic engine at the heart, the ninja system. It's not a secret that the beating heart of Konoha's economy is its shinobi. This is a ninja show after all. The Hidden Leaf is basically just a giant mercenary company for other countries, providing services from recon to combat to diplomacy. And it cultivates this super specialized service economy through a publicly funded academy, training kids in deadly ninja arts and sending them on missions at like 12 years old, and if you're cold, even younger. The missions they do are scored from D to S rank. These are ordered in difficulty, from catching a stray cat or walking an old lady down the Konoha street to infiltrating a hostile state, and everything in between. Naturally, these missions can come from any number of places like civilian request or high-powered international clients. But missions, especially the high-ranking ones, don't just pop out of thin air. They're born from conflict. No conflict, no missions, no money. In the shinobi world, every clash or feud is just another opportunity for a ninja to get a bag. And this isn't chump change we're talking about. Missions provide huge sums of money to those that can complete them and the village that issues them. Let's run the numbers real quick. In chapter 150, Kishimoto gives us his estimation on the Naruto currency, Ryo. According to him, 300 Ryo is about 3,000 yen or $30. Given that and some info from the data books, the mission payment breakdown is this. With that, we can start to learn a little bit more about ninja income. For example, we can look at the man, the myth, the legend, the copy ninja himself. According to the data books, Kakashi is putting up prime Jordan numbers. He completed 197 D rank missions, 190 C rank, 414 B rank, 298 A rank, and 42 S's. That's over 1,000 missions. And if we run the numbers with an average mission rate, we get around $66 million. So yeah, Kakashi is loaded. More importantly though, we can assume that the village that issued it is taking a fat chunk of that too, maybe around 40%, which would mean that Kakashi has netted the village at least $26 million. And all that money ninjas make is spent across the village, which has the knock-on effect of stimulating the economy. That ramen shop you love? They're in business because hungry shinobi drop their paycheck there. The weapon shop down the road? Well, ninjas need kunai and shuriken to fight. Even farmers win, supplying rations to fuel the whole operation. Without shinobi taking on missions and bringing that money back home, the village would just be a quiet little town with no real economy to sustain it. Ninja aren't just protecting the village, they're paying everyone's bills too. The point is, missions are the backbone of the economy, where most of the money is brought into the country, contributing the bulk of the revenue to the Hidden Leaf economy and driving demand across the village. And with missions come a whole number of ethical problems. For one, there's that whole child labor thing. 12-year-olds are sent out on life or death missions for the sake of the village. Then there's the inequality that generates within the village. Elite clans are walking around like the Walton family with their generational ninja income. Most importantly, since the mission supply is driven by conflict, there's an incentive to keep the conflict machine going to keep the missions coming. But it goes even deeper than that, because it's actually not the village that decides where the money gets put in the first place. It's this guy. Wait, who is this guy? Well, to really understand who this guy is, and by extension Konoha's economy, we need a quick little history lesson. During Japan's Sengoku period, the country was a mix of territories controlled by feudal lords who were like governors, called daimyo. They collected taxes, had armies of samurai, and were almost always warring to protect and grow their power. And it wasn't until unifiers like Oda Nobunaga, Toyotomi Hideyoshi, and Tokugawa Ieyasu came into the picture that this chaotic system started to calm down. That started a new dynamic, where the shogun held absolute centralized control over political and military matters, and the emperor above was more of a ceremonial figurehead. So, daimyo, shogun, emperor. The Warring States period in Naruto was pretty similar, with shinobi clans instead of warring samurai. The story goes that the Senju and Uchiha led the conflict, and ultimately, the goat, Hashirama, brought a system of relative peace among the warring states, building the Hidden Leaf Village in the Land of Fire. The Land of Fire is the country, one of 5 main countries in the Naruto verse, but there are a bunch of smaller ones, and is led by the daimyo, or feudal lord. The part economic, part military hub of the country is the hidden village, led of course by the Kage. The Hokage is kind of like the shogun, the military and largely political arm. Now, back to this guy, who actually gets replaced by this guy. The role of the daimyo is pretty underexplored, and we really only see the guy when the next Hokage is being selected. But, with some brief references, we do know that the daimyo is the big boss when it comes to financial backing and decision making, with funds collected from all of his territories. The Naruto-verse daimyo is kind of like a mix between the real-world daimyo and emperor, hands-off supreme divine leader at times, and manager of all things financial and political at other times. In the case of the Hidden Leaf, it and the Land of Fire have a symbiotic relationship. Konoha is this huge engine and protector, but it also relies on the country to fund it and give it resources in times of need. The relationship is a win-win, as long as there's conflict to fuel the system. Lucky for them, conflict isn't just the juice that fuels the engine, it's a byproduct of the system too. We see an example of this with the Wind Daimyo in early Naruto. He makes a call to outsource the missions from the sand to the leaf after a treaty, cutting funds down for the sand. He says it's cheaper, giving us a peek at the greed of the daimyo and the short-term incentive structure of the ninja world. Ironically, it's also a catalyst for the impoverished sand to team up with Orochimaru to cause, you guessed it, more conflict. Ninja wars work the same way, with the cycle of hatred that Pain has that tough speech about. So, in this way, Konoha's brutal economics are self-perpetuating. Missions and profit structures lead to inequality, which lead to more conflict, which lead to more missions, and so on. And the whole time, the daimyo can just sit back and rake in the money. But then Naruto becomes Hokage, so everything is fixed, right? Well, kind of. Naruto comes in and basically stops the big wars and unites the big villages. Konoha's economy has to adapt. Suddenly there's less demand for, high-level assassinations and stuff. So, it modernizes, and moves to a more mixed economy. Yeah, there are still missions, but there are trains and burger chains too. There just isn't as much room to profit off of conflict and war as before with Naruto calling the shots. But the deeper inequality here, the distribution of money and the system that concentrated at the top, still exists. The daimyo are still sitting on their piles of gold and small villages are still left with the scraps. The Byakuya gang shows us some of this. Not that Byakuya, this Byakuya. And yes, I had to watch Boruto for research. Even though this guy ended up being full of it, the arc touches on the poverty that exists even in one of the richest countries in the Naruto world. So the system isn't broken, it's just updated. And that's really the takeaway. The economics of the Hidden Leaf and the ninja world aren't just about missions or daimyo. They're a mirror for how systems of power and profit adapt to survive. Whether it's the mission system or corporations creating conflict and then profits for those at the top, it's all part of a machine that's been built to survive, no matter how much the world around it has changed. There's no question that Naruto changed the world for the better when he became Hokage, but the work's not done. Are they cooked? Well, for starters, they shouldn't have the daimyo running the show. And they should make sure that whatever system replaces that allocates funding more evenly to the small villages so they don't just become breeding grounds for more conflict. That way, the root cause of inequality gets addressed too. Yeah, Boruto will figure it out. So, there you have it. The brutal and messy economics of the Hidden Leaf Village. Good thing this is all just a funny story about some funny ninjas though, right? Thanks for watching.